Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Commercial Street Bridge Replacement Public Online Meeting. Thank you for your patience while we waited for everybody to join to start this meeting. An update on the governor's modified open meeting regulations. On March 12, 2020, Governor Baker issued an executive order modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law to enable public bodies to carry out their responsibilities while adhering to the public health recommendations regarding social distances. I would like to note that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted online following the meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alan, who will go through all the technical aspects of this virtual meeting. Alan?
Great. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining the MBTA and the project team here for the Commercial Street Bridge Replacement Project online public meeting. As Mike said, my name is Alan Belniak, and I'm a senior product manager at VHP, the engineering firm helping the design of this project and to facilitate these meetings. Before we get started in earnest, I'd like to outline the process for participating in this meeting, as well as remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted online following the meeting. To prevent any sort of disruptions, your webcam video will be turned off during the meeting, and you'll be muted during the meeting presentation to prevent any excessive background noise. We will open up the meeting for questions and comments after the presentation, and we encourage you to participate. We request that you do only share one question or comment at a time, just in order to give everyone an ample opportunity to share their question or their comment. If there's time remaining at the end and you have a second or third question or comment, please do so as well. And if unfortunately we run out of time today to submit questions live on the Zoom meeting, you can email that question to the project email address, which is commercialstreetbridge@mbta.com. That's commercialstbridge@mbta.com, and we'll show that email address later on as well. As with a standard public meeting in person, we ask attendees and speakers to identify themselves so we have a record of who attended. If your name in the Zoom window or chat or Q&A does not clearly identify who you are, we might please rename yourself now, if you could, with first and last name so we know who you are. During the course of the meeting, one member of the project team or me might rename you if you have not done so yourself. This would occur, for instance, if you use an email address or first initial, last name, or similar, and it's not easy to identify who you are. And then during the Q&A session, if you are one of those people who raise your hands, we might just ask you just to prompt you before you start your question or a comment, just to identify who you are, again, just for that public record. So speaking of that Q&A and that commentary period, if you would like to submit a typed question, you can use the Q&A button down in the Zoom controls at the bottom of your screen, and you can type that in. And when the Q&A portion begins, we'll first respond verbally to questions that have been typed in using that Q&A feature. If you wish to share your question or comment verbally, you can press the raise hand button, also in the bottom strip of commands. And if you're dialing in on the telephone, *9 does the same thing. It will raise your virtual hand next to your phone number, and that way it'll send a signal to us that you want to ask a question or share a comment. We'll call on you in the order that the questions come in, and then after you raise your hand, we'll lower your hand. We'll put you back in the muted state. We'll let the representative subject matter expert on our team here answer the question, and we'll go through the rest of the questions and comments that way. If you're joining us by phone, you may follow along the presentation online. You can go to mbta.com/commercialstbridge. That's all one phrase, mbta.com/commercialstbridge, and then click Learn More and Join the Meeting to locate those presentation files. And that's it. So just one more reminder that you will have to state your name for the record, and this meeting is being recorded, and I'll remind you once more when we get to the Q&A period. And with that, I'd like to hand it back to Mike Ryan at the MBTA.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Commercial Street Bridge Replacement Project online public meeting. As Alan said, my name is Mike Ryan, and I'm a senior project manager at the MBTA working on this project. I'd like to thank you all for your interest in the project and taking the time out of your day to participate in this online meeting. I'd also like to thank any elected officials who are in attendance with us today also. We look forward to hearing your comments and questions after the presentation. First, we'll start with an overview of the project history, scope of work, and schedule. We'll discuss how and when the proposed work may affect you. This is an important project and a key component to our continuing efforts to improve the state of good repair of the commuter line system. The Commercial Street Bridge was originally built in 1913 and is approaching its end of its useful lifespan. While we're here today discussing the Commercial Street Bridge replacement, I want to share that this is part of a larger design build program. This program includes the replacement of 6 different bridges, all contained within the single program, where Commercial Street is one of those bridges in that program. Accompanying me as part of this meeting, a representative from our design build team from Barletta and VHB, who I've asked to provide some additional detail and context related to the Commercial Street bridge replacement. Thank you again for your time. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bob from VHB to start the presentation.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Welcome again, everyone. The slide you see in front of you is a proposed rendering of the future Commercial Street Bridge, showing it in space and where it would look in its final location. Just as a point of reference, I wanted to mention, so the steel, the bridge superstructure, which is the top portion of the bridge, is shown in shades of blue. And that's intentional to help provide and show some clarity in the renderings and some of the other photos you'll see in this presentation. But the actual color of the steel, once it's actually constructed, will be black. But I just wanted to kind of point out that difference. Next slide, please. As Mike mentioned, himself as the MBTA Senior Project Manager for this project, Gary Orlando is the project manager from Barletta Heavy Division. Myself, Bob Penfield, I'm the design manager working for VHB, and my counterpart, Andrew Burkholder, is our senior engineer, also from VHB. We'll be meeting with you today. Next slide, please. So an overview of what we're here to talk about today. First, as Mike mentioned, we're going to have a quick overview of this project and its context and how it sits within a larger design build program. And then we're going to get into some more specifics about this particular bridge. We're going to talk about the site location and the existing conditions, the project needs and the project goals. We'll describe the proposed bridge layout and the design, the construction staging, and then the traffic impacts we'll see during those different construction stages, and then we'll discuss the project schedule. Following that, we'll provide some additional opportunities and discuss some opportunities for additional public outreach, and then we'll open the floor to any questions you might have. Next slide, please. So as Mike mentioned, this particular project, Commercial Street, is one of 6 bridges that are being replaced as part of this larger design build program. We've got a bridge in Weston, one in Wellesley, one in Somerville, one in Melrose, and another in Lawrence, in addition to the one here in Lynn. Next slide. And as you can see, all of these 6 bridges are all located in various locations within the MBTA's commuter rail system. In our case here, we're on the Newbury-Rockport line. Next slide. To give you an idea of the program timeline, back in 2016, the preliminary design of each of these 6 bridges had begun. And in 2017, the MBTA's Capital Delivery Group was looking to accelerate the pace of their infrastructure improvement projects. So they decided they would combine 6 individual projects into one large program. And then they would use design build as the procurement method to accelerate the pace of the project and to encourage more innovation. And what design build is when you have a team that's comprised of both the contractor and the engineer as a single team. So during 2018, 2019 was the procurement for this program. 9 teams proposed, 3 were shortlisted, and ultimately the Barletta VHB team was selected as the best value. From 2019 to 2022, we are in the midst of the final design and the construction. So while the specific schedule varies by each one of those 6 bridges, the full program will be all complete by August of 2022. And we'll get into some specifics about the schedule for this project, this location in just a little bit. Next slide. So here's a map view showing where we are located. This is, again, this carries MBTA's commuter rail over Commercial Street in Lynn, just north and of the Lynnway, Route 1A. Next slide. And what we'll do here is we'll zoom in to see a little bit better view of the existing conditions and some of the site constraints. We'll just have a moment here while it zooms in. All right, so in this satellite view here, you can see kind of in the shaded purple is the MBTA's right of way, and you can see the inbound and outbound tracks. Essentially in this direction, you're facing inbound towards the city of Boston. You can see Commercial Street crossing underneath the MBTA's tracks, and some of the various businesses that are in that location kind of highlighted. And then shaded in green there is what's called the superstructure staging area, which is going to be the area where we partially construct this, this new bridge. But we'll get into a lot more detail on that in just a little bit. Next slide. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my counterpart, Andrew Burkholder, to get into some of the more specifics.
All right, thanks, Bob. So we wanted to first take a look at the existing conditions for the Commercial Street Bridge. As Mike mentioned, the original structure was built in 1913. It was originally a 4-track structure. Only 2 of those are active today, as you can see in the picture in the right-hand side of the screen. The bridge itself is composed of steel girders with an open deck and concrete gravity abutments at each end. Commercial Street underneath the bridge is about 33 feet 6 inches from the face-to-face of the curb, and then on each side there's a sidewalk that's approximately 8 foot 3 inches wide. There are a lot of utilities in the area. As you can see from the pictures, we have signal and fiber optic lines that are carried by the bridge. There's power overhead. There's a lot of utilities in the street, so it's a pretty busy area here at the bridge location. In terms of operations, on any given weekday, there are 68 commuter trains that use the bridge, and then on each weekend day, we have 26 commuter trains using the bridge. There's also some local freight that use the bridge as well. Next slide, please. So why does this project need to happen? And the reason is this existing bridge is in poor condition. So as Mike mentioned, it's outlived its useful service life. The steel superstructure is rated a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. So again, it's in poor condition. And so for the MBTA's goal of continuing to provide a safe and efficient transportation system for the T-riders, and also to maintain its state of good repair, this bridge was selected to be replaced. Next slide, please. So the project goals here, as I mentioned, are to maintain that state of good repair and to replace this bridge with one that's resilient and provides a minimum of a 75-year lifespan or service life. And we want to complete this project and replace this bridge, all while minimizing impacts to abutters in the area, the commuter rail riders, and the users of Commercial Street. And we'll go into how we're going to do that in a couple slides. Next, please. So we looked at the existing bridge, now getting into the design of the new bridge. Again, as I mentioned, it's a complete bridge replacement. The track profile will be raised through this section. It'll be raised about 12 inches, and that's to accommodate a new ballasted structure. So the existing structure has ties that sit right on the steel components. The new structure and what's typically done and typically built for railroad bridges is to build a bridge that can accommodate the ballast, the stone, and the railroad tracks. And so in order to accommodate that, we need to raise the profile through this area. We are going to use some accelerated bridge construction techniques to reduce those impacts to abutters and T-riders and users of Commercial Street, and we'll show that staging in a minute. The new structure will be a single span similar to the existing, and the new abutments will be built behind the existing abutments. And then we also are designing the superstructure to accommodate future expansion. All the construction will be within, or is anticipated to be within, the existing right-of-way. Next, please. So the graphic here at the bottom of the screen is looking at the bridge as if you were standing on Commercial Street and able to cut the bridge right in half. You can see the existing abutments in a brownish color. The new abutments are shown in gray, behind the existing, and these are supported by micropiles, which are drilled into the ground. These are round steel piles, again, that are drilled into the ground and filled with grout. And we will be providing a vertical clearance of 14 feet 6 inches under the bridge. Next, please. So this view or graphic at the bottom of the screen, this is if I were up on the tracks and able to cut the bridge in half, a transverse section. You can see the ballasted through girder design. The gray is the stone ballast, and the brown rectangles are the ties, and the blue represents the steel structure. Again, the bridge we put back is going to accommodate 2 tracks, but you might notice that the girders, or the girder on the right side of the screen is larger than the girder on the left side, and that's because this bridge will be designed to accommodate future expansion to the south. And so this a new track or new tracks can be added to the south side of the bridge without having to reconstruct this structure. Next, please. This is an overhead view or a plan view showing the extents that the sidewalks will be reconstructed and Commercial Street will be repaved. So it's essentially from Alley Street to Bennett Street. The Commercial Street will receive new paving and the concrete sidewalks will be rebuilt at the end of the project. Those are shown in the orangish color. Next slide, please. And you saw this picture at the beginning of the slideshow, but this is the completed final condition with the steel bridge shown here in blue, although it will be black in real life. So we wanted to show you, I mentioned some accelerated bridge construction techniques, and we also mentioned impacts to Commercial Street and some impacts to the T-Rider. So I wanted to step through the construction sequence so you can see how that's all gonna work. So we now have a graphic on the screen looking from south to north, showing the existing bridge, the existing tracks, and then the abandoned bays, and then Commercial Street, of course. Next slide, please. So our first step would be to install the micropiles behind the existing abutment, as you saw in the graphic. So the machine shown here works up at the track level and installs the micropiles behind the existing abutments. This is done without impacting Commercial Street and without closing or impacting the commuter rail lines. Next slide, please. The next step would be to demolish a portion of the existing superstructure. So as I mentioned, there are 2 bays worth or half of the bridge essentially is not being used currently. And so in order to make some room to assemble the new structure next to the existing, we need to remove portions of the existing structure as shown here. This would be a closure of Commercial Street over a weekend. And this is due to the overhead work, the safety concerns. We would need to close Commercial Street for a weekend to remove this portion of the structure. And in a little bit, Bob will get into some of the detours and how that will look while Commercial Street's closed. Next slide, please. And then this slide is just showing what that will look like with that portion of the bridge removed. Next, please. The next step would involve what you might call, or what we call, full shutdown. So this will involve a weekend track outage of the line and a weekend shutdown of Commercial Street. And so we're considering a weekend to be after the last train on Friday evening until the first train Monday morning. So during that time, there would not be trains running on this line or traffic on Commercial Street. And during this weekend outage, it allows us to excavate down to the previously installed micropiles, install precast concrete caps, abutment caps that the girders will rest on, and then the precast concrete approach slabs. Next, please. So here you can see all of that has been installed. This is still during that same weekend closure. Next, please. And then that gets covered up, buried by Monday morning to allow the trains to run again first thing Monday morning, and Commercial Street is reopened. Next slide, please. So the next step is to assemble the new superstructure next to the existing. This would be a third closure of Commercial Street over a weekend, again, because of the overhead work above the roadway and for safety precautions. So we would install the new bridge girders and new superstructure, assemble that right next to the existing. Next slide, please. So this slide shows that new superstructure right next to the existing. We might need some temporary supports to hold that in place temporarily. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we enter our second weekend full shutdown. Again, this involves the track shutdown and the commercial street closure, Friday night to Monday morning. This allows us to use some SPMTs. These are self-propelled modular transporters, basically a big flatbed with lots of wheels that can lift the structure and drive it to where we need it. So those would get installed. Next slide, please. The existing tracks would be removed and the remaining portion of the existing superstructure would be demolished. Next slide. We would then simply move the new superstructure into its final location using the SPMTs. Next slide. And then reinstall the ballast, the stone, and the new track. Again, this is still during that same weekend closure. Next slide. And then Monday morning, trains are back in service. Commercial Street is back open to traffic. All right, and then the final step of the project is to repave the portion of Commercial Street that I showed before and to reconstruct the concrete sidewalks to the limits that I showed previously. And then that completes the Commercial Street Bridge project. Next, please. I think Bob's going to get into some of those detours during the closure.
Thank you, Andrew. As Andrew mentioned, we're using accelerated bridge construction techniques to reduce the impacts to both the commuter rail and the commuters that use the commuter rail, and also the traveling public that uses the streets around Lynn, Commercial Street specifically. There are a couple of instances, there's a handful of instances, 4 to be exact, where Commercial Street underneath the bridge would need to be closed over a weekend. So during those weekends, we would establish a detour, and that's what we're showing on the screen here. And I know it's a little bit small, so I'll try to walk through it. But if you were traveling, let's say inbound, southbound on the Lynnway, you would have several opportunities to take a right, starting at Market Street and Pleasant Street or Blossom Street, to take a right to get across or underneath the tracks. If you were continued on southbound on the Lynnway and got to Commercial Street and tried to take a right, well, Commercial Street would be closed, so you would be asked to take a left, go down Commercial Street, Circle Ave. You could take Day, but I think we signed it as Hardy, and then to jump back onto 1A and get yourself back around northbound onto the Lynnway. If you are traveling northbound on the Lynnway and you wanted to take a left onto Commercial Street, but it was closed, you would simply continue northbound on the Lynnway and take a left onto Market Street. If you were traveling towards Commercial Street from the north, you'd essentially do the opposite of that, but you would use essentially Blossom Street to get yourself underneath the tracks and then onto the Lynnway and back around. So again, it's we're trying to utilize the existing street network, and it is only for those 4 weekends where we would be shutting down the streets for the bridge work. Local access would be provided along Commercial Street through all of this, though. Next slide, please. Now, I'd want to just get into what our proposed project status and schedule for this particular bridge location. We're looking to do the site cleaning and site prep fall of this year, so starting over the next several months. The foundation work, the installation of those micropiles that Andrew mentioned would be spring of 2021. Partial demolition of that existing, the out of service tracks would also be spring of 2021. We'd be assembling that new bridge adjacent to the existing bridge next summer, 21, moving that new bridge into place in fall of 2021. And then the site cleanup, final repaving and striping would be spring of 2022. Next slide, please. So how you can reach us, there's a few ways. We've got a project website that's been up. It's www.mbta.com/commercial-st-bridge. We've got an email service, commercialstreetbridge@mbta.com. So if you get out of this meeting and you think of another question and want to ask it, please reach out. We're We respond to any questions that come up through that email service. We also have a 24-hour hotline. That's 617-571-7878. And we man that. We'll take voicemails and we'll call back and respond back. So if you've got any questions, we're looking forward to hearing from you. With that, that concludes our presentation. So we would open this up for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Bob. So what we'd like to do now is shift over to any raised hands. I'm sorry, any typed in Q&A and then raised hands. And so to start, we've got a couple questions in our Q&A box. So what I'll do is I'll read off the first of those questions, and then Mike will respond, or Mike will ask someone else on the project team to respond. Just as a reminder, if you're joining us late, just a couple things to keep in mind. We are recording this meeting, so just one to remind folks of that. If you are in the Zoom meeting and you'd like to ask a question with the raise hand feature, please look for that icon down in your strip of commands below. You can also use the Q&A box to type in a question if you'd rather not raise your hand. And for those those people joining the meeting via telephone, if you'd like to raise your hand to speak, you can signify that to us by pressing *9, and that will send us a command for you to raise your hand. Again, that's *9, and when the time is right for you to unmute yourself, I'll walk you through that process. So with that, let's go to our first question in our Q&A queue, and that's from Stefan Wunsch. And Stefan asks or comments, my understanding of the current Blue Line extension long-range plan is to locate the 2 Blue Line tracks south of the 2 Eastern Route tracks. Is the new bridge span being located as far north as possible so as to allow space for a future Blue Line? Or if not, is there anything about the design which anticipates and or facilitates the Blue Line extension?
Well, Stefan, thank you for your question. Thank you for joining the public meeting tonight. To answer your question, the bridge design will not preclude the extension of the Blue Line. It's just, we understand the future, potential for expansion. And I believe even Andrew mentioned it in his presentation that it will be able to, as you say, facilitate or, not preclude future expansion.
Great, thanks, Mike. Next question is from Stefan as well. The Keolis speed limit over the current bridge is 60 miles per hour or 40 miles per hour for freight. Will there be a speed restriction during and or after the bridge replacement? And if so, for how long?
Another excellent question. I'm not 100% sure why. Obviously, there can be multiple factors why there's speed restrictions in a certain area, whether it's the structures itself, the alignment of the track. It can be as simple as the signal system, the blocks that are set up where coming in and out of curves, stations, etc. To answer your question the best I can, when the bridge is replaced, it will allow that area to go back to track speed. So if there's nothing else that's preventing the trains to be reduced, then they'll run faster than that at 60 miles an hour. If there's something else in that area that I'm not 100% sure with from that list of potential items that I just list, then it would still be at 60 miles an hour. I hope that answered that question for you.
Mike,
Okay.
if I may, just to add in, during construction.
Oh, go right ahead. Yep, I missed that part of the question. Thank you.
No problem, Mike. During construction, there is going to be track work. So for the period of time next year, there will be periods where we probably would be reducing the track speed as we realign and adjust the profile of the existing track. As far as the durations for that, we don't have the specifics on that, but there will be a short period of time where there would be certainly be a speed restriction just essentially right before the new bridge is moved into place.
Thank you, Bob.
Great, thank you both for that. And one more question at the moment, also from Stefan. Are there any public utilities affected by the project, or are the only utilities related to railroad operations?
Actually, I'm going to have Bob help me with this one too. I don't believe we're doing much on the roadways. I don't believe any public utilities are affected, but
Mike, you're absolutely right. We are not affecting any of the utilities. There's underground utilities within Commercial Street. Our bridge is designed to avoid any impacts to those. There are some overhead utilities, quite a few, in and around the bridge site. We worked hard to develop a construction sequence that avoids the impacts of those utilities. Aside from, as Stefan, as you mentioned, utilities that are related to railroad operations. Yeah, some of those are being relocated to facilitate this bridge work.
Thanks, Bob.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you
Stefan.
both.
Great questions.
So as of right now, we have no more questions in the Q&A. Just one more reminder, if you'd like to submit a question, please use the Q&A feature down below to type your question in, and we'll be happy to address it. We've got a few folks calling in or dialing in, so if you'd like to ask your question verbally, you can use the raise hand feature. Or again, if you're dialing in via telephone, *9 on your keypad will send us the raise hand command, and we can take you off of mute to let you ask your question. In the meantime, another question came in from Stefan once more. Is there any underspan or adjacent street lighting planned as part of this project?
Bob, do you want to field this one also, please?
Sure thing, Mike. No, at this point, we do not have any additional street lighting underneath the bridge planned as part of this project. We are going to be protecting in place any of the existing street lights that are there, or if there are any that are affected by the construction, they would be replaced. But that would be it at this point.
Thanks, Bob.
Great. Oh, thank you. Okay, just scanning over the list here. Okay, we have no more questions in the Q&A. Looking at the attendees here again, one more call. If you'd like to ask a question for using the Q&A feature or raising your hand, please go ahead and do so. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up or anything in the Q&A box. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Mike to see if he would like to add any concluding remarks.
I'd just like to thank everybody for taking their time out of their day to join the meeting tonight and learn about the bridge project. Feel free to check out the website. You can sign up for emails about the projects. Feel free, if there's other questions that you have or items that you want to follow up on, feel free to email the project at the address that's up on the screen. And just thanks again for taking the time to learn about the project.
Okay, thanks everyone. That concludes our meeting.